Rain hammered the valley like it had a score to settle sirens somewhere in town, and I stood with one hand on the cold brass lever. My granddad bolted into a concrete head wall in 1963, while the HOA president Pamela Cross shouted that I was committing terrorism. And Sheriff Tom Alvarez watched with that face men wear when common sense is the last sandbag on the riverbank. And in that moment, I had to decide whether to keep holding back the water that always wanted to go home or let nature do the talking. You know what I mean. They built 32 houses on land. My family grazed since Kennedy laid a clubhouse slab right across our boundary line. Tapped my spring box like it was some communal spigot, then handed me an eviction notice on my own porch, yeah. That happened. If someone stole your legacy and told you your barn violated their vibe, would you keep the gates shut for their comfort, or open them slow and lawful for the truth? My name's Cal Walker, Dry Creek County, quarter-mile upstream from a subdivision with the pretty name Silver Meadow Estates, and about as much meadow left as a parking lot fourth generation on 812 acres. That smell like hay and riverstone, and my wife's honeysuckle, which still blooms under the kitchen window, where Rachel used to tell me what the creek was thinking, because she was the scientist in the family. Wrote her master's thesis on this. Exact watershed could read a frog chorus, like a weather report. And when the sun hits that window at 5 p.m., it still finds her somehow. After she passed 18 months ago, I tried to keep my head down. Fix the fences, answer my daughter Mia's calls about selling and moving closer. But the land kept clearing its throat like it knew a fight was coming. And it did right on schedule, in a white SUV with white heels and a white folder of rules for a neighborhood I never joined. Pamela stepped onto my porch with a deputy in tow, and a perfume that tried to wrestle my honeysuckle told me with a smile that my non-conforming agricultural structures threatened aesthetic consistency. Which is a delicate way to say my grandfather's barn didn't match their paint chips. So I told her quietly that my family set the standards here before her cul-de-sacs had names, and my rooster Lucky backed me up by attacking her handbag like it owed him lunch, which I admit was fun for about 4 seconds. The next morning, the mailbox detonated with 42 violations and $500 a day. Fines livestock odor on a cattle ranch fence, height-blocking community cohesion equipment visible from road. The kind of nonsense that makes a person think about all the folks making rules for jobs they've never done. And then the county inspector, Evan Morales, rolled up at dawn with a tape measure and a sorry face taking pictures down to the 1/4 inch, while Lucky pecked his clipboard like a tiny lawyer with sharp teeth and no patience. By lunch, I owed enough to buy a truck a week, and something in my chest went from sore to steady, so I called a property lawyer named Jace Monroe. Big hands, no tie voice like a gravel road. After rain, and he laid out maps on my kitchen table and pointed at the floodplain lines, like a preacher underlining Judgment Day, Sal. They didn't bend a rule, they crawled under your fence and took your boots. Ground radar found our 1963 concrete marker buried under their clubhouse slab, which is not a clerical error, that is a confession in concrete. So we filed for an injunction and asked for records, and for the first time in months, my lungs remembered how to beongs. Retaliation came fast. A red tag on my barn with an order to evacuate livestock. Anonymous calls about diseased cattle and unsafe chemicals that turned out to be mineral blocks older than their HOA, a mechanic's lien for drainage work. I never requested on land. They didn't own, and Jace laughed that quiet lawyer laugh. Judges hate that quantum meruit. You can't break into a house, paint a wall. then bill the owner for brighter vibes. Then Pamela staged a big safety meeting at the clubhouse. The one sitting illegally on my side ran a slideshow called Agricultural Threats to Family Health, used photos of my cows like crime evidence, and I walked in with Jace and said, "Since you're meeting on my property without permission, I thought I should introduce myself, and you could feel the air change like a storm." Turning the page, a retired teacher named Ellen asked whether the whole subdivision was in a bowl. A civil engineer named Anna zoomed into a map on her phone and asked where all this water goes during a real storm. And truth, as it often does, showed up as a simple question. Here's the twist, and it hit me at 2 a.m., under the soft yellow kitchen bulb, when I opened a dusty box and found Rachel's thesis binder, and I turned page after page like a man reading his own blueprint. 50-year storms. How this valley becomes a shallow patient bowl by design. How upstream agricultural management, our dam, our gates, our pasture, is the buffer that keeps downstream towns dry. And she had underlined riparian rights, the part where upstream owners can use and release water for legitimate agriculture. And she wrote in the margin, "Remove the buffer. The bowl fills where it always meant to." And I laughed for the first time in weeks and told her photo, "Rach, you left me the map." We formed a kitchen table council that wasn't about vengeance. It was about safety and law. Ellen brought 60 years of science and backbone. Anna ran models showing that a slow, controlled release would soak basements and carpets, but not knock foundations sideways. An Army Corps vet, Jack Rivas, traced a finger along our brass valves and said, "Your granddad knew his business a quarter turn." Wait, listen to the gauge. Patience is the difference between a lesson and a disaster. And Jace stacked statutes like cordwood wetlands, violations, self-dealing. If HOA dues bought Pamela's landscaping conflict of interest because her husband, Councilman Derek Cross, had voted on North Peak permits, while holding a piece of the company reporter Dana Brooks started asking for documents, and we gave her what we had, Pamela doubled down. The way fragile power does, filed emergency eminent domain. Calling my ranch blighted, shoved a restraining order at a judge to stop me from altering natural water systems. Like watering cows was now a felony. Sent a private investigator to build a welfare check binder that accused me of talking to livestock and maintaining shrines to the deceased, which is a complicated way to describe feeding Lucky and tending Rachel's honeysuckle. And when Dr. Patel from Mental Health walked back to her car with Sheriff Alvarez, both of them looked like they'd just seen the wrong crazy. The storm arrived like a marching band radar, lit up the Weather Service tone, climbed from watch to warning. To that phrase, nobody forgets. Flash flood emergency, and the clubhouse filled with neighbors. While rain darkened the parking lot, Jace and I walked in. Late, Anna put the live radar on Pamela's table. Ellen laid down Rachel's maps like evidence in a trial, Jace said quietly. Your developer used conservation money to bulldoze a flood storage basin and hid the paperwork. Phones buzzed, Dana. Posted that North Peak executives were being detained on grant fraud allegations. Another link showed council minutes where Derek voted himself richer, and you could feel faith shift like lumber under too much weight. Pamela made her last mistake. She pointed at me and yelled, "He's manipulating the weather to destroy our equity." And a soft-voiced engineer named Bob shook his head and said to no one in particular, "We paved a bowl, and now we're surprised it holds water." The fire alarm chirped as rain found a ceiling box. Someone yelled about children. And the sheriff raised his hand and asked for my plan, and I gave it to him. Plane quarter turn, hold check. 3 points downstream. Broadcast instructions. And he looked at Jace and got the word. He needed lawful upstream riparian use, and then he said, "Nobody lays a hand on this man today. Call your lawyer." Monday. If you've never opened a valve that decides whether a valley breathes or chokes, it feels like holding a heartbeat. A lever moved under my palm with a greasy honesty, and the gate sighed hot. A movie roar, just a long breath. The land had been holding Jack on the radio checkpoint. One steady rise. No surge. Anna on the scanner move. Vehicles to high ground, avoid basements. This is a controlled release. And I said, Rachel's name, not for drama, for courage. Cameras showed what cameras love: kids splashing in ankle-deep water under expensive signs. A car door opening into a puddle. Neighbors standing very still while they reconsidered who had been the problem. A reporter asked if I felt bad for destroying a community, and I told her, "Ma'am, I didn't destroy anything. I stopped preventing nature from fixing what was broken." And somewhere, 1,000,000 comments started typing themselves. Paperwork followed truth like it always does. Dana posted HOA ledgers showing payments to Cross and Bloom Gardens. Pamela's side business. No bid contracts for shrubs nobody remembers voting for. Inspector Morales held up a photo of our 1963 marker. Living under their slab, the state AG's investigators walked across the grass with gentle voices and firm eyes, and Sheriff Alvarez told Pamela and Derek to step aside for a conversation. No cuffs, not yet. Just the soft sound a room makes when a spell breaks, and people realize the water and the math and the law have been whispering the same thing all along. By dusk, the gauges held steady. Foundations wet but sound drywall. Drinking the lesson insurance agents clearing their throats. Water proving itself patient, not cruel. And I stood by the head wall, thinking about Rachel and the way she'd have smiled at the precision of it. The restraint, the simple fact that slow water tells the truth without raising its voice. That's where I leave it. Not with a parade. Just the image of Pamela stepping from the clubhouse she planted on our side into shin-deep proof that maps matter. Walking with 2 investigators toward a black SUV, while 50 phones recorded and nobody cheered the rain ticking on the hood. Lucky arguing with thunder like he was born for it, and me with my hand on a lever my grandfather installed for days exactly like this. So tell me straight. Was I right to open the gates? Slow and lawful, knowing carpets would soak and basements would fill, or should I have kept holding back what everyone knew would come eventually to protect a lie? For one more storm, where is the line between property values and the truth of the land? And what do you do when power mistakes itself for right? You tell me, drop your city. Drop your story. Argue with me if you have to. And if you want more stories like this, ordinary folks getting underestimated until the day they aren't, hit subscribe, ring the bell. Share this with the neighbor who needs to hear it. And let's talk about justice, the way water teaches it. Slow, steady, and all at once.